Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. This is Deb McBride, and it is Sunday, February 6th in the year 2022. And I am broadcasting from lovely Escazú, Costa Rica. And it has been another day of battling the leaf ants. And that's what we do in Costa Rica. We have to battle the leaf ants, or at least I do. I've been called militant about battling the leaf ants. But, I'm happy to coexist with nature, of course. But, there's a line and there's a boundary, and we're going to talk about boundaries. And we have to have boundaries with the leaf ants, or otherwise we don't have plants anymore. We come out in the morning and what was a gardenia yesterday is now sticks, okay? So you have to be very, very careful. And my honeysuckle got it. One of my honeysuckles got it the other day, and I didn't know it. So got to battle the leaf ants, and I had to handle them today. So anyway, boundaries. Why am I talking about boundaries? Because the last few days have been very interesting and a bit of a whopper, I think. And boundaries relate to Saturn. And the Sun and Saturn were conjunct on Friday. And this happens every year. Every year the Sun conjuncts Saturn. And every year we are we're illuminated as to our boundaries. We're illuminated to what has been a boundary, or what should be a boundary, or where our boundaries should exist, where they don't exist. And, and if you have any heavy dose of Saturn in your chart, you're constantly reminded of boundaries. And if you have Saturn aspecting by transit anything in your chart, I bet you're getting boundaries, okay? Lessons around boundaries. So it isn't just boundaries, it's restrictions. And one of the things about Saturn is that when you look at Saturn through a telescope, as I mentioned the other day in my Instagram, Saturn's a beautiful object. And, whenever people do planetary things and draw planets and they draw Saturn because it's the most recognizable. The moon has craters. But when you see illustrations of planets, everybody goes for Saturn, right? And I'm like, ooh, no, not Saturn. Because Saturn has a reputation in astrology. And one of the things that we recognize the most recognizable about Saturn is its rings. And when I've looked at the telescope and seen Saturn in the telescope, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful object, but the rings are very distinctive. Now, other planets do have rings as well. I believe Uranus and Neptune have rings, and they are not as visible as Saturn's. When you look at Saturn, it's not this light little ring. It's this band of rings. And you're like, wow, that's majestic. And it is. But what does that speak to? What do those rings look like? They look like a fence. They're boundaries. And Saturn, just by looking at it, reminds us of its boundaries. Can you imagine Saturn without its rings? It's like naked. Saturn with no rings. That doesn't happen. It's like naked Saturn. Saturn's not that vulnerable, the energy of Saturn. Think about it. If you're ever wondering what Saturn means, think about Saturn with its rings and then try to imagine it without its rings. It's like, where does Saturn go? It's a protective measure. And Saturn is a major protective measure. Just the thought of Saturn without its rings, it's like, Saturn is like, I'm exposed. Yeah, because that's what happens. We get exposed, and when we don't have boundaries, or, our vulnerabilities are showing up. And Saturn helps us to have boundaries, and then at the same time can impose restrictions or give us boundaries that we really need to break down. So it's a double-edged sword with Saturn. Either you have boundaries in the right measure, or your boundaries are too strong. If you have too many boundaries and because of fear, then one of the things that you need to do is look at your boundaries and see where you can loosen them up a little bit, And so the Sun and Saturn met, and it happens every year, and every year we experience a Sun-Saturn conjunction. And it can be something, good, where we're reminded of our boundaries and all. But then this time it wasn't alone. It was, hours after Mercury went direct. Now, Mercury went direct late on Thursday evening, and Sun and Saturn met on Friday afternoon. But I can tell you that I started feeling the Sun and Saturn on Wednesday night. And I'm sensitive to these things, obviously, and I'm tuned into them and I'm keyed into them. I see them on my app, I see them in my charts, I see them in my book. Sun and Saturn are meeting up. And so even if I want to believe that that's not going to be a big deal, because many times it's not, one of the things that you need to remember is that I need to remember anyway, is that it's going to creep up and affect you. So even if I say, oh, that happens every year, it's not a big deal. This year I really felt it. And this year, because I think it was so close in proximity to Mercury going direct from retrograde, and there have been so many retrogrades, so much retrograde since December, that all of this it was finally this breakthrough of Mercury going direct, and now it's like breathing a sigh of relief and saying, wow, this is finally finished. And then there's Sun and Saturn, and it's like, no, you got to stay within the confines of your boundaries here. And it's like, we can't just go out and party. I made this Instagram the other day. We can't just go out and take over the world. And there was just way too much Saturnine energy for us to feel like we just glided through the end of Mercury retrograde and we can just move on with life. I feel like it was just a very heavy couple of days, and I still feel it. Even though Sun is separating from Saturn, Mercury's just about starting to get some motion, and this has been a lot of slow agony. At least for me it has. I felt this very profoundly in these last few days. And yes, everything should clear out. Yes, it's the end of the retrogrades. Hurrah, let's celebrate. But Saturn never really wants to celebrate because it's in the middle of its cycle, and it's like, no, we've got more work to do. And several people and myself, I used the word defeated. And I was talking with a friend last night here in Costa Rica, and she said, yeah, defeated. That's the right energy. It's the right word. And, some people were saying that the energy felt defeating, and it felt defeated. And I definitely agree with that. I definitely felt this sort of defeated energy. Now, that being said, it isn't necessary to feel defeated when Sun meets Saturn. And even though it's in Aquarius and I'm in Aquarius, I'm going to feel it more strongly. But it doesn't mean you must feel defeated, or you should feel defeated, or you're definitely going to feel defeated. It means that sometimes when we reach that moment and we feel that sense of defeatedness, it could be that something in our life needs to shift forward. Maybe we've had too many boundaries. Maybe we've had too much restriction. Maybe we feel like at every turn we've been blocked. And sometimes that is, I remember reading in Robert Hand's book years ago, one of Robert Hand's books, and I think it was probably Planets in Transit. He said, it's probably Saturn overdoing itself, and I never forgot that statement. Saturn is overdoing itself. And I thought, Saturn overdoing itself. Yeah, and I think that this was what I felt like. It was way too much Saturn, and Saturn overdoing itself. And it's just, it's been heavy. And so moving through the heaviness and getting to the other side of the heaviness has been work, and that's more of Saturn. So to not allow it to feel so heavy or defeated has been work in and of itself. So this has been a very interesting, slow, profound recognition of one's boundaries, where one has exerted too many boundaries, where there have been boundaries that were not necessary. And then there's also, there's an ounce of regret in some of these things where it's like, oh, I had too many boundaries, too much that's been in place, and it's caused me to be overly cautious. And Saturn does that too. It's like, it's a cautionary planet. And I said last week, and I've been saying all along, work with this one step at a time, no rushing forward. That's why I said we can't take over the world yet. One step at a time. And it has been that. It's just moving through this one step at a time feels a little rough. I'm going to be honest. It was a little rough, even just one step at a time. So it may be way too much caution. Maybe I have too much caution. Maybe I'm feeling it in a deeper way because it's in Aquarius. It's in my sign. But I have to say that I've talked to other people and they're telling me that they've kind of had it this week. And you know, this is Saturn at its finest. Now maybe you didn't feel this, and I'm happy for you. But this is one dose of Saturn. If I'm ever reminded of Saturn's energy, this has been it. I won't forget this one. So there we go, Sun and Saturn. And as we move through the week, we have, we're getting further and further away. The Sun moves away from Saturn, and we're not, in Pisces yet, so it's still going to be hovering around in Aquarius. But some of the things that are going to start happening is that one of the things that's happening is Venus and Mars are getting together. And this has been something I've been talking about for months and months. This is pretty interesting. And Mars is at 9 Capricorn as I speak, and Venus is at 12. And yes, for sure, that's a conjunction. They are conjunct. And I've been looking forward to this because it's very rare, and I think it's good for people in relationships and stuff. But at the same time, all of this business that's happened in the last week with Mercury going direct right near Pluto, and then, and then Venus went direct a few days before that, and Sun and Saturn, I feel like essentially that Venus and Mars have gotten ignored. Like the happiness around the two of them has been really ignored. This wasn't necessarily front and center. So maybe this week, while there isn't so much Saturn, we can start to focus on Venus and Mars a little bit in our relationships. And the other thing that's happening is the asteroid, or I don't know, I read somewhere that it's a dwarf planet. The asteroid Vesta is also working side by side with Venus and Mars, and she's very close to Venus right now. And Vesta, what is Vesta? I don't talk about the asteroids very much, but Vesta is an asteroid, or for some people a dwarf planet, but we were always taught it was an asteroid. And Vesta represents the Vestal Virgins, and they kept the fires going in Rome. And they were not allowed to let the fire go out in Rome because they were punished if they let the fire go out. So I find this really interesting. Vesta is in Capricorn with Venus, and then it'll travel with Venus and Mars. And then eventually when Venus and Mars meet up with Pluto in a month or so, Vesta will be with them. So it will be Vesta and Venus and Mars and Pluto, and the moon is going to go over them during that time period too. It's not like the moon is going to be in the opposite part of the zodiac. The moon is going to be right up there with them. And, Vesta is the fire. So the Vestal Virgins, they managed the fires, and they kept the fires burning. And so what is fire? Fire is passion. And, we don't think of Capricorn as necessarily a fire. It's not a fire sign. It's an earth sign, but it's sensual. And, Saturn can be sensual. Believe it or not, that Saturn that I just spoke of can be very sensual. And you think about Saturn, you think, oh, Saturn's not sexy, but it's sensual. It is an earthy planet. It rules Capricorn. And Capricorn can be, sensuality. It's the tangibility. It's the palpable feeling of that sensuality, of that earthiness. And earth signs are sensual. I know Virgo doesn't necessarily appear to be that, but let's stick with Capricorn for the moment. Capricorn, we're getting Venus and Mars in Capricorn, and Vesta is with them in Capricorn. And so the fire, the passion. So Venus and Mars are, that's enough passion as it is, but then Vesta is with them. Ooh, passion. And this is something where the sparks and the flames are alive and they are enveloping Venus and Mars. So each of us can look at where Venus and Mars is happening in our chart. If we know around like 9 and 12, Capricorn, where is that? And the Vestal fires are being ignited alongside Venus and Mars. So I'd say that's pretty sexy, no? So I want to say that this is something to look forward to because this is something that's very unusual. It's not even just Venus and Mars. It's Venus, Mars, and Vesta. And then and then eventually Pluto, which is also very sexy. So I think we've got some sexy things happening, and I don't get to say that very often. When do you hear me talk about sexy things happening, sexy energies happening? I don't. And I'm too busy like telling people, and my class we were joking the other night. It's like, go in and do the work. I keep talking about going within and doing the work, and we were all joking about like going in within and doing the work. And, and I talk about that a lot. So... but this is a sexy energy, and I think that it doesn't have to be physically sexual. It could be creative. Fire is creativity as well, and Venus and Mars are creative. And where do you feel creative in your life right now? Where do you feel like being creative? Where do you want to ignite the fires of creativity? Ooh, that's fun. That's interesting. So this is, as Venus is slowly moving forward. Venus, like I said, was at 11 degrees for 16 days. She's finally at 12. It's been a long climb. So slowly, there's a sensual, slow dance going on with these planets in this asteroid. And I think we have to pay attention to that. And maybe it's good to flip the switch right now and like put Saturn with its rings on the shelf and start focusing on, the sexiness, the Venus, the Mars, that where do you want to assert yourself in that way creatively? Where do you have like creative things that you want to do? Where do you want to maybe reach out to a potential partner now that Venus is direct and Mercury is direct? Where do you want to connect with people socially and get the fires moving and get the flames of desire or the flames of creativity or the flames of inspiration moving in your life? That's very exciting. So I would say this is an exciting time, and we have to kind of switch off the Saturn and switch on the Venus Mars. And I think everyone is eager to do that. After all this retrograde, everybody's eager to switch on that Venus. And I really hope that everyone does. I hope as you listen to this, you're like, yeah, where can I switch on the passion in my life? It doesn't have to be sex. It can be creativity. It could be inspiration. Where are you inspired? It could be the fires of spirituality. Use it how you feel is best right now. One of the things that's so important is that they are actually also talking to Uranus, all these planets. And, Venus isn't exactly talking to Uranus. It never made it all the way back. Like Uranus has been at 10 Taurus, and Venus went back to 11. So I'd say that's a trine. And, Uranus is going to be at 11 this week, and Venus is at 12 now. And so this is a trine. It's from Capricorn to Taurus. Those are both in the same element. And that means that when they are close in degree like that, they are in a 120 degree aspect, which is flowing and beneficial and provides opportunity. And so we pay attention to where they are. So that means that Venus, Mars, and Vesta are trining Uranus. And Uranus is the planet of surprises and a little chaos and unexpected events and the little bit of things going upside down a bit. So maybe when it's in trine, it's a little easier to move those things forward. Like, it's not staticky. It's not chaotic. It's a little smoother. It's a smoother path to innovation and surprise and risk-taking, okay? Risk-taking. And That's okay. It's might be a good time to pick up the phone and call someone and take a risk. And it should be easier to do that. However, I have to say something about trines. Trines are smooth and flowing and they provide us opportunity. You want the opportunity and you want to take the opportunity as opposed to not taking the opportunity and waiting, and then the square comes, right? So Venus will move into Aquarius and then square Uranus, and then it's going to feel like, why didn't I take the opportunity? Because now I feel forced. Now you feel like you have no choice, but you have to jump off the cliff. So that's the difference between a trine and a square. A square is a 90-degree aspect. When you are taking the opportunity, like right now, there's opportunity to reach out, to do things, to the opportunity to use this energy in an inspiring way. And then there's also what's going to happen, in a little over a month when Uranus gets a square from these planets, and you're like, uh-oh, I should have done that back then and I didn't. And now I feel like my hand is forced because I'm running, like there's an urgency and I'm running. And I just, why didn't I do this before? And then it feels a lot harder and then there's pressure. So that's a square. When we feel pressured, when we feel like a heavy duty impulse, when we feel that it's more complicated and there's more at risk. And, if you are thinking of doing something, if you're thinking of reaching out to someone, even for a job or something, or you're thinking of diving in and doing something, I would say catch your breath, take a deep breath, and find your way through it now. And that's important because you don't want to wait till the square happens. And I can take my own advice too. So that's part of it. And on Tuesday the 8th, Mars will give an exact trine to Uranus, and that'll be at 9:57 a.m. Eastern Time. And that's, 10 in the morning is kind of early to be taking risks, right? Risks feel like an afternoon thing, or maybe cocktail hour. Cocktail hour risk. Unless you're jacked up on coffee at 10 a.m. and you're like, yeah, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to jump off the cliff. And it's Mars and Uranus. Yeah. Okay. Do it. It's pretty funny. But we are, we're moving in a direction towards more passions and more, and it's warmer. Venus and Mars are going to be warmer than they were. And, we're moving towards something that's, a little freer than what we've been under. So I think that's a good thing. In the meantime, what else is going on this week? Mercury is going to meet with Pluto for the last time on the 11th of February, okay? So this is coming from the end of December when Mercury met with Pluto. And then Mercury met with Pluto right before Venus went direct, which was like the 28th or so of January. And then it's moving direct now, yes, and it will move past Pluto again. It's hovering around Pluto. And Pluto and Mercury are not separate really, but they'll be exact on Friday, and that'll be the exact conjunction. So if you feel like you need to do some very critical thinking, do some very intense creative work, they're in Capricorn, maybe you need to do some, maybe you're doing your taxes, you got your, line items all sorted and your spreadsheets all organized, that's good for Mercury and Pluto. Maybe you've got to have a difficult conversation or a transformative conversation, maybe there's a transformative conversation that you'd like to have. Maybe you'd like to, transform your mind. And that's a really good thing to do with Mercury and Pluto. Maybe there's something, in a meditation that's going to help you transform your mind. Or maybe there's something that you need to transform your thinking about something. and how have you been thinking about something. So it's not a simple aspect, it's a complicated aspect. It's not something that is smooth and flowing like this Venus, Mars, Vesta trine Uranus. It's something that's, intense. And also watch your words. Watch your words this week as we get close to that Mercury Pluto. Watch that you don't speak harshly to someone. Be very self-aware of your words and how you speak and how you communicate to someone. It's a great time for a breakthrough, an intellectual breakthrough, a spiritual breakthrough. It's a really good time for that. And maybe you are about to have something like that, and that would be great. Or maybe a breakthrough, like in understanding something. Maybe you're studying something, and your mind finally grasps something really deep and powerful. Maybe you're studying a very intense topic. Maybe you are going to have a breakthrough in communication with someone, and that would be really good, wouldn't it? So that's good. It's important to recognize that. So use that energy wisely. Use it correctly. Don't use it in a way that's going to hurt anybody, okay? And we're going to get into, Mercury's going to fly through the rest of Capricorn this week. And by the time we get to Monday, the 14th, Valentine's Day, it will be going into Aquarius. So it went into Aquarius before, and then it turned around and came back through Capricorn as it was retrograde. So that's something that's important. So it will tread over the places in Aquarius where it was before. And, as we move forward through this week, let's see. Right now the moon is in Taurus, and it's going to be in Taurus for days. It's going to be in Taurus Monday, tomorrow. It's going to be in Taurus Tuesday, and it will go void, of course, in Taurus at 11:48 p.m. Eastern Time. So that's late at night. People are going to be sleeping in this region of the world, and it will go into Gemini at 5:27 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. So, if you live in this region of the world, you're sleeping for most of that time. You sleep through the void moon. That's good. Okay. And then we move to Thursday, where it's, Wednesday it's in Gemini, Thursday it's in Gemini, Friday it's in Gemini, and it goes void at 3:23 a.m., and it moves into Cancer at 6:27 p.m. So Friday, the moon is void all day, okay? And it's a real, it's void in the sign of Gemini and communication. So it's an interesting dynamic that the moon is in Gemini while its ruler, Mercury, is conjunct Pluto. And when we have, Mercury with Pluto and then the moon is void, there might be this is why I'm saying, watch your words and watch your thoughts. You could really talk yourself into something or out of something, and you could talk yourself out of something important. So I would say that these things are, as I said the other day on my Instagram, they don't happen in a vacuum. Mercury doesn't go direct in a vacuum. It was going direct at the same time Sun was squaring Saturn. Okay, Sun was conjuncting Saturn, meeting up with Saturn, okay? That was hard. That made it harder. So with Mercury, the moon is in Gemini, ruled by Mercury, which is going to be talking to Pluto. Ooh, that's intense. And then it's going to be void all day, the moon. All day. Basically in the working hours in this region of the world anyway, void. So it's almost like if you say something on that day, you might want to take it back, and then you can't, okay? And it's really important to watch your words that day. So please watch your thoughts and keep your thoughts clean. Keep them optimistic and happy and breakthrough oriented, and not harsh towards yourself either. We have to talk sweetly to ourselves. And then Saturday, the moon will be in Cancer all day. Sunday, the moon will be in Cancer. And we're going, opposite all those planets in Capricorn, Venus, Mars, Vesta. And then, on Valentine's Day, the moon is going to go void, and it'll enter Leo. So it'll be void at like 5:27 a.m. and then like not even an hour later go into Leo. So the moon in Leo on Valentine's Day, that next Monday, is actually very festive. So yeah, there you go. And that's about it. A little lighter week. Things are shifting direction. They've shifted direction. Mercury will start to move, and things will not be so heavy as they were. That was a very heavy energy we had on Friday with that conjunction of Sun and Saturn. So yeah, that's where we are. And I recommend that if you find all of this intriguing and fascinating and you would like to have a session with me, then please go to my website, thegoldenastrologer.com, and book a session. We're at Book Online. And if you'd like to get on my mailing list, you just have to go to my website, thegoldenastrologer.com, once again, and there's a little box, and you can enter your information in the box, and you'll join my mailing list. And my Instagram is The Golden Astrologer. My Twitter is at @DebAstrology, and this podcast is every week on Sundays. And if you are at all interested in Reiki from the fifth dimension, drop me a line. Say, hey, what's that all about? I do have to write something up about it on my website, other than, I do have appointments you can make. But fifth dimension Reiki is really powerful. So that's something I offer as well as astrology. Thank you for listening. Thank you for always being there, and gratitude to each and every one of you. And I hope this finds you in a better, passionate place this week, and that the energies lighten up, and that you are having a beautiful week ahead. Thanks for listening. Gratitude to all.